Was wanted for the shooting deaths of 8 people. Police were asking everyone to be vigilant, saying he was driving this red Toyota with the license plate you see there. We are
to death on this block. Now, police at this hour, they're seeking an individual, that man by the name of Romeo Nance, and investigators say he may be driving a red Toyota Camry. Police this afternoon coming to the 2200 block of West Acres Road on the west side of Joliet and found 7 people shot to death in 2 homes that are right across from each other. The victims believed to be related to each other. And we're also learning Nance is wanted in connection with 2 other shootings that occurred yesterday, one in Joliet that wounded a man in the leg, and one just outside the city that killed a man. Both are being investigated by the Will County Sheriff's Department. Police say the motive for all these shootings is unclear, but believe that Nance is somehow associated with all of the victims. In fact, police had one of the homes on this block under surveillance because it was Nance's last known address, and they later discovered those victims inside.
It was supposed to be a quiet Sunday in Joliet, Illinois, a peaceful suburb just 40 miles southwest of Chicago. Life moved slow here, familiar, safe. But on January 21, 2024, the silence was shattered. In a matter of hours, a young man, just 23 years old, would commit an unthinkable act. Romeo Nance went on a rampage that left 8 people dead, 7 of them his own flesh and blood. It was one of the deadliest mass killings in recent Illinois history. And the question that haunts Joliet to this day is, why? If you're new to the channel, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. This is True Crime Stories Hub, and today we unravel one of the darkest tragedies to ever hit the Midwest. January 21, 2024 was a Sunday, the kind of Sunday where most people in Joliet, Illinois were just living. Grocery store runs, coffee at Speedway, church bells echoing down quiet streets. In homes scattered across the west side of the city, football games were playing in the background. Kids laughed upstairs. Parents checked their phones and prepped for the week ahead. West Acres Road, a simple neighborhood, modest houses, mailboxes leaned slightly from years of weather. Nothing about it screamed danger. Nothing about that Sunday warned of what was to come. But beneath the calm, a storm was brewing, and it had a name: Romeo Nance. At 4:15 p.m., Romeo was behind the wheel of a red Toyota Camry. He turned onto Davis Street, just a short drive from his home, and then he saw a man, a random man, a stranger, standing outside, minding his business. The car slowed, the window rolled down. Then, without warning, a shot rang out. The man was hit. A single bullet tore into his leg. He collapsed to the ground in shock. Romeo drove off, not looking back.
Coming to the 2200 block of West Acres Road on the west side of Joliet and found 7 people shot to death in 2 homes that are right across from each other. The victims believed to be related to each other. And we're also learning Nance is wanted in connection with 2 other shootings that occurred yesterday, one in Joliet that wounded a man.
As casually as if he had just made a left turn. The man would survive, barely. But this moment, this exact moment, marked the beginning of something far more sinister. Because Romeo didn't stop. This wasn't an isolated attack. It was a test shot, an emotional crack in the dam. And once that dam broke, the flood couldn't be stopped. Joliet would never be the same after this. In the next 2 hours, 7 people, all connected by blood, by love, by shared childhoods, would die by Romeo Nance's hand. But in that first encounter, nobody knew the scale of what was unfolding. Police were called, ambulances arrived, one man lay bleeding on the pavement, and somewhere in Joliet, Romeo Nance was still driving, calm, collected, focused, and his next stop would be a home filled with the people who had known him since the day he was born. Just 10 minutes after the Davis Street shooting, another call came in. This time it was different. It wasn't a leg wound. It wasn't survival. The address, Pheasant Run Apartments, a quiet residential complex nestled just off West Acres Road. A few trees lined the perimeter, the kind of place where residents knew each other's routines, where disturbances were rare and violence rarer still. But now, red and blue lights painted the brick walls. Joliet police officers rushed up a staircase with weapons drawn. Inside one of the units, they found him. Lying face down was 28-year-old Toyosi Bear, a man with promise, a life once filled with dreams and ambition. Born in Nigeria, Toyosi came to America with the hope of building something better. And on this January evening, he was found with a bullet wound to the head. Still alive. Barely. EMTs worked feverishly, lifting his body from the floor and rushing him into the back of an ambulance. But the damage was done. He would later die at the hospital. His death would barely register in the news cycle that evening, one of many violent incidents in Chicagoland. But for investigators, there was a thread, a pattern starting to form. Security footage from outside the complex was pulled almost immediately. The camera caught a single vehicle, a red sedan. Same make, same model, same suspect. Romeo Nance. It was no longer just a drive-by, no longer random. This was targeted, calculated, and it wasn't over. Not even close. Romeo had one more stop in mind, and it was the most personal one of all. As daylight faded over Joliet and temperatures dipped below freezing, law enforcement's focus narrowed to one specific house, 2200 block of West Acres Road. The red sedan, the one seen fleeing both shooting scenes, was registered here, Romeo Nance's home. Detectives from Will County and Joliet Police coordinated efforts as the house was placed under discreet surveillance. No lights on, no movement, just stillness, like the eye of a storm. But something wasn't right. One of the deputies noticed a smear, faint but unmistakable. Blood on the porch, leading toward the front door. They approached slowly, weapons drawn, no response. When the door was breached, even the most experienced officers were left shaken. Inside was a massacre. Tamika Nance, Romeo's mother, found dead in the front room, shot at close range. William Esters, Romeo's uncle, lifeless in the hallway. But that wasn't all. Down the hallway, in the back bedrooms, they found more. The victims were young, some just teens. Romeo's cousins, all of them, executed. A total of 5 bodies lay across the home, each one with a story, each one part of a family Romeo had grown up with, shared meals with, celebrated birthdays with. This wasn't a robbery gone wrong. This wasn't impulsive rage. This was systematic. Room to room, he moved. Room to room, he pulled the trigger. Tamika, William, Shakita, Carlos, Trinity, Breonna, all gone. All at the hands of the same man they once called family. By 6 p.m., Will County investigators realized the scale of what they were looking at. This wasn't just a multiple homicide. It was a mass killing. And the suspect, Romeo Nance, was now armed, dangerous, and missing. What could drive someone to annihilate his own bloodline? The answer wouldn't come for another day. And when it did, it would leave the entire country stunned. Just as officers processed the carnage inside Romeo Nance's home, another call came in. It came from across the street. Neighbors had reported the same eerie silence at another residence, just a few steps away, a second home, where more members of the Nance Esters family lived. What investigators found inside that house would push the death toll even higher, and the tragedy beyond comprehension. Christine Esters, Romeo's aunt, gone. Joshua Nance, his own brother, shot and killed. Alexandria Nance, his sister, lifeless. And 2 teenage girls, just children, Angel and Alana, cousins, both murdered. There were no signs of forced entry, no struggle. These were not strangers. These were people who likely opened the door to someone they trusted. In total, Romeo had taken the lives of 7 family members across 2 homes In less than an hour, mothers, brothers, nieces, cousins, entire generations wiped out in an instant. Photos from a candlelight vigil, taken just hours after the news broke, show a table of framed portraits, some victims smiling in graduation gowns, others still in elementary school. One child, a 3-year-old, was initially missing, feared dead. But against all odds, she was found, alive, somehow spared from Romeo's rampage. The family, though, now forever shattered. A neighborhood left reeling, a community paralyzed with grief. What had happened that day in Joliet was no longer just a crime. It was a massacre. And Romeo Nance had vanished. As the sun dipped below the horizon in Joliet, residents hoped the worst was behind them. But for Romeo Nance, it wasn't over. Later that evening, as police began piecing together the unfolding nightmare, Nance's red sedan was spotted again, circling a quiet neighborhood, creeping slowly past houses, watching. That's when he struck, again. A 42-year-old man was simply unloading groceries from his car when bullets rang out. Hit in the leg, wounded, but alive. This wasn't a robbery. This wasn't a dispute. It was cold, calculated, an execution attempt. A neighbor, Curtis Ellis, described what he saw from just a few doors away. It was a whole clip. He was trying to kill. I heard the shots, one after another, bam, 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 and then silence. Surveillance footage later confirmed it. Nance had circled the block more than once, watching, waiting. This wasn't random chaos. It was the final act of a spree killer on the move, and he was just getting started. After the bloodshed in Joliet, Romeo Nance knew his time was running out. With a shattered family and the law closing in, he fled. Nearly 1,100 miles away, Nance's journey took him south, from Illinois to Texas. His first stop? A highway rest area. There, he swapped out the license plates on his car, trying to cover his tracks. But it didn't take long for the authorities to catch on. U.S. Marshals were on his trail. The manhunt, which had already spread across state lines, was getting closer. Nance's last moments of freedom were short-lived. By the evening of January 22, 2024, his car was spotted in Natalia, Texas, a small rural town, but it wouldn't remain peaceful for long. At a local gas station, U.S. Marshals closed in on Romeo Nance. Surrounded and cornered, he had no way out. And just as the authorities prepared to take him into custody, Nance did the unthinkable. He took his own life, using a gun he had hidden within his vehicle. A self-inflicted wound, ending the life of the man responsible for one of the most horrific killing sprees the Midwest had ever seen. Romeo Nance's escape ended where it began, with violence. But the damage he had left behind would haunt his family and the community of Joliet for years to come. As the dust settled and the investigation deepened, the same question lingered on everyone's mind. Why? Why would a young man, seemingly from an ordinary family, commit such unspeakable acts of violence? Police Chief Bill Evans summed it up best when he said, "We can't get inside his head." There was no clear motive, no suicide note, no manifesto to explain the brutal killings. The answers that everyone sought remained elusive. Investigators tried to piece together his background, searching for any signs, any clue that might explain the unexplainable. Mental health struggles? A possibility, but nothing confirmed. Romeo Nance had no history of violent behavior before that day. Some pointed to undisclosed family disputes. Maybe there was a deeper fracture, a hidden tension that pushed him over the edge. But even that was speculation. Theories poured in. Some suggested Nance was struggling with personal demons, others speculated about family secrets. But no matter how hard they searched, no one could find the definitive answer to why Romeo Nance turned on his own family. What remains is an endless question, a void of understanding. And as time passes, the Nance family and the community of Joliet will continue to search for answers. But no one may ever truly understand why this tragedy unfolded the way it did. As investigators pieced together Romeo Nance's final days, another figure began to emerge. Kylie Cleveland, Romeo's 21-year-old girlfriend. Cleveland became entangled in the case when she was charged with obstruction of justice. Authorities say she lied to investigators about Romeo's whereabouts during his escape, hid her phone, and even pretended she didn't know his phone number, all while the search for him intensified. She had a 3-year-old child with Nance, a child who was fortunate enough to survive the horrors of that day. But her actions, or lack thereof, only deepened the mystery of what Romeo Nance had been planning. Kylie Cleveland remains under home confinement, awaiting further legal proceedings. But her role in this tragedy raises more questions. Was she an unwilling accomplice, or did she actively help Nance evade capture? And as the legal battle continues, the child she shares with Nance will grow up with a story no one can fully understand, a legacy of violence, confusion, and loss. In the aftermath of the shocking events, the community of Joliet came together, bound by grief and the need to heal. It wasn't just a neighborhood in shock, it was a town in mourning. The streets, once filled with the hum of everyday life, were now quiet, with a shared sorrow that couldn't be ignored. In the days that followed, locals gathered to remember those they lost. Balloons were released into the air, each one carrying a name, a prayer, a memory. Names of victims chanted in solemn unison as the candlelight flickered against the darkened sky, shining a light on their loss. This was more than a crime scene. It was a family home, a place filled with love, joy, and laughter, a place now forever marked by tragedy. Cara Esters, a relative, spoke of her family's spirit. My family was all about love and laughter, and that spirit, even in the face of such heart-wrenching loss, brought the community together. Through prayer circles, memorials, and shared tears, the town of Joliet showed that even in the darkest of times there is a light, and that light is love, remembrance, and unity. In the wake of the tragedy, the Joliet community rallied together in ways that reflected the resilience of the human spirit. A GoFundMe campaign was set up to help cover funeral costs, quickly raising over $60,000, a testament to the outpouring of love and support from strangers, friends, and family alike. Across the nation, people stood with Joliet. President Joe Biden issued his condolences, calling the tragedy a senseless act that shattered the lives of many. Mayor Terry Darcy echoed those sentiments, urging unity and strength in the face of such overwhelming grief. But as the days passed, one thing became clear. The victims of the January 21st shooting will never be forgotten. Their legacy is not defined by the horror of their deaths, but by the love they shared, the joy they gave to those around them, and the lives they touched. Their legacy will live on through every person they loved and every memory they shared. Joliet will forever remember them, not as victims, but as family, as friends, as neighbors, as people who lived full lives and whose stories continue to inspire. Rest in peace to Christine, William, Tamika, Joshua, Alexandria, Alana, Angel, and Toyosi. May their memories guide us toward peace and understanding, even in the darkest moments. If this story moved you, please like, comment, and subscribe. We're True Crime Stories Hub, and we'll see you next time.